This video is part of a series that I call Beyond How to Paint. This one will be more about my own personal philosophy of art, what I think truly matters, beyond the technical side. I know my channel is mostly about how to paint, but we all know that there is more to art than mere techniques. Making art can be reduced to a formula. It requires a soul, it requires emotions. And this video will try to explore some of these issues and, in particular, propose a reflection on art as a problem versus art as a mystery. Most of my YouTube videos and most of my tutorials deal with art as a problem. How to paint fat or lean, how to prepare a canvas, what brushes to use. It's a good thing to have problem-solving content like this. It's necessary, but unfortunately, art can't be reduced to a series of problems to solve, or it risks becoming heartless and devoid of spirit. We all know that technique is important, but that art is not only about technique. However, it's hard to pinpoint the issue at work here. If art is not only about technique, what else is it about then? The world of art has been lost on this issue for more than a century now. In most of the art world today, it's accepted that art is not about technique, and it's even worse than that. Techniques and skills are despised, seen as old-fashioned, outdated. Once people realized that art could not be about mere skills, artists fell for the opposite trap, making art which is not about technique at all, making art that rejects actively the technical side. This is what is still taught in most mainstream art institutions today. That's why we have art that feels so strange and disconnected today. Art which seems to be devoid of art because it doesn't require craftsmanship anymore. Actually, the etymology of the word art goes back to the Latin ars, artis, which means skill, craft, technical knowledge, as opposed to scientia, science, which is purely theoretical and intellectual, and as opposed to natura, nature, which produces forms without reflection. That's probably why art without technique is so strange and out of place, because fundamentally the word art means technique. However, art can become too preoccupied with skills and techniques, it's true. This is what the neo-academic paintings of the 19th century have proved. Technique is not enough. And on the other side, it can also become too oblivious of technique, as with a lot of contemporary art today where anything goes and people don't know how to evaluate this anymore. The question of representational realism is interesting in this regard. Should you try to paint realistically to imitate photos, or should you disregard imitation altogether? The first option makes you run the risk of being so preoccupied with photorealistic imitation that you ignore the subject. What is the painting really about? Why paint in the first place if a photo can do the same or better? And the second option, disregarding representation, leads to a sort of a Mondrian or a Pollock-looking art world, where everything is just abstract geometry or random drippings on a canvas. So how can you paint figuratively without falling for any of these traps? For me, the key is to make a painting which is about the very heart of our existence as human beings. It is a concrete painting which starts with a realistic representation of things, but that doesn't stop there. It is a painting which starts with appearances, but also goes beyond the visible reality. In this regard, my views are very near to the philosophy of the French existentialist thinker Gabriel Marcel. For Marcel, there are two levels of reality. The first reality is the world of the objects, appearing as posed in front of us. It is the domain of the having, the domain of the visible, the domain of the palpable. The other reality, which can only be discovered by a second, distanced, detached reflection, is what Marcel calls the being. And these two levels of reality, to have and to be, are not opposed to each other. So the level of the objective world and the level of the subjective world are not face to face. The second reality is rather embedded into the first one. You have to look and reflect carefully at the material reality, the objective reality, and reflect upon it to see the second one, the more existential one, emerge from it. And for me, art is the perfect medium to access this second level of reality, if we can say so. Art has the power to pierce the veil of appearances. The artwork can take us beyond the world of objects through the power of our imagination. The work of art is not just about the objects represented on the canvas, but about how these objects, in this particular imaginary context, make us feel, how they affect us, how they impact us, from an objective representation to a subjective impression. That's the power of art. And to me, this is how a strong painting impacts us, by first faithfully imitating the appearances of the world, the textures, the volume, the proportions, the materiality of the actual world, of the painted objects, but also in a second time by helping us transcend this very level of reality and by helping us contemplating our very existence as a mystery. Our daily life is ruled by objectivity, and don't get me wrong, objectivity is useful and we need to see the world as a series of problems to solve. That's very useful, and thank God we have this. But if we get stuck at this stage, we become blind to what cannot be reduced to a series of problems to solve, like love, death, fidelity, friendship, things like this. Art has the power to liberate us from this prison of objectivity. This is, this mystery, this impression that a painting hides something deep and undescribable, this feeling that the painting says more than it shows. Not through a hidden message or an enigma that needs to be decoded, but through a contemplation that the viewer experiences subjectively as something deeply existential. Gabriel Marcel has a central thematic distinction between two notions, problem and mystery. A problem is something which I meet, which I find completely before me, but which I can therefore lay siege to and reduce. But a mystery is something in which I am myself involved, and it can therefore only be thought of as a sphere where the distinction between what is in me and what is before me loses its meaning and initial validity. I think this is really a fitting idea because in front of a painting, it's not really like an actual object is in front of you. It's more like I am here looking through the space, the imaginary space of this strange painted reality that's in front of me. But it's not like I can grab the objects. It's sort of taking a part of me and turning it into part of the experience of how looking at the painting makes me feel. A problem is a question in which I'm not involved. Anybody can solve a problem with the appropriate solution. Overcoming a problem requires some technique, a technique that could be employed by any person confronting the same problem. How to paint a face, how to mix colors to get accurate skin tones, how to get accurate proportions. This is all part of the realm of the problematic. With decent AI and good algorithm, if art was only about technique, it would mean that computers could produce real art, good art. But they can't, because art is as much a problem as it is a mystery. Marcel often describes a mystery as a problem that encroaches on its own data. Unlike a problem, it makes every difference who is asking the question when confronting a mystery. That's why the same subject painted by 10 different artists will look significantly different, even though they might use the same techniques. Unlike problems, mysteries are not solved with techniques, and therefore they cannot be answered the same way by different persons. This is why Each painting is unique and why copies are not as valuable as the original. For a true work of art is not just about the object. There is an added value that comes from the subjectivity of the artist, and another layer of value added by the subjectivity of the viewer confronted with the painting. This is why a painting can have such a strong impact on some people and leave others completely cold. It's a subjective experience that demands participation. Problems are addressed impersonally, in a detached manner, while mysteries demand participation, involvement. That's why a good, strong painting is always a mystery. And don't let your paintings become problems, as if they have a solution to find, a key, an enigma to decode. Your paintings should be mysteries. They should involve the viewers as well as yourself. A mystery is a problem that reflects upon itself and goes beyond the veil of appearances. That's my take on the issue. Technique is fundamental, but art can't be reduced to it, and it can't reject it either. It's a subtle balance. Art can't be without technique, and can't be all about it either. It has to transcend it. That's the key. The realistic representation of an object in a painting is here to help us see the reality beyond the object. It's here to help us understand ourselves as human beings in an infinitely complex world. So make sure to learn all the techniques and master them so that you can transcend them. Problem and mystery are not antagonists. The second is embedded in the first one. You need to know the rules before you can break them, and you need to solve the problems of art before you can turn it into the mystery that it truly is. That's it for this video. It was something different than what I usually do, but don't worry, my channel will still focus also on the technical side of painting because it's always important, so make sure to tune in for the next one. Have a wonderful Christmas, and as always, joy and inspiration to you all. Bye.